Hello there. We're in Portugal today, visiting the Casa Mateus in Villarreal, about an hour's drive from Porto. Mateus being a wine brand that I remember from my childhood, a rosé wine that used to get sold everywhere. Used to be a very popular bottle shape. Used to be considered the kind of thing you'd have when you wanted a special wine from somewhere exotic in the world, and it was from here. And I haven't seen that wine for decades. I'd even forgotten it existed. But then travelling in Portugal, I went past this place and thought that's a familiar name. And there on the front of the bottle is the image of the palace itself. Now this is a very rainy day, and I managed to get a corner of the courtyard here between rain showers and thought to myself, let's just bash out a quick sketch here and it'll all be fine. And of course it isn't fine. I get rained on again, which is becoming, becoming the theme of this YouTube channel, I think. John gets wet. But I did something that I found interesting in hindsight. I decided I had to work very fast because you could feel the rain was going to come. And so I picked up my acrylic pens and just started to bash out as many quick jiggly lines as possible and really enjoyed myself. There's a sort of shorthand quality to this. I realised that the drawings that I like the most are the ones that don't look quite so me-like. I tend, when given time, I can tend to sort of overthink things, add a bit of fiddliness, and it loses some sort of immediacy. And the drawings that I like the most, that I do, tend to be drawings which somehow lost that. They have a sort of looseness and a freeness that just feels a bit more casual. I did start with a very quick pencil sketch just to kind of establish the major forms. I find that a kind of a reassuring way of making sure my drawing fits on the page. That's always been one of my worries, that drawings kind of don't quite land on the page where I want them to, partly because of the speed with which I draw, that I can sort of lose track of one side of the drawing and while I'm drawing the other side. So after the quick laydown, I just picked up a single colour Arrtx acrylic marker, brush pen, and just put in the major marks, just in a very kind of urban sketchy kind of way, not thinking about light and dark and shadows, just thinking about the architectural forms in a form of a line. You can see I've chosen a pale sort of grey blue paper and specifically offset that with a sort of terracotta acrylic brush pen. Now these aren't really representative of the colours in the building, which is a sort of a grey and beige stone, a warm stone, but they are an interesting colour combination in their own right. They are kind of opposites on the colour wheel, if you know what I mean by that. So the terracotta and the sort of eggshell, I guess, blue, sort of bounce off each other. It creates a sort of optical effect where there's a sort of shimmering quality to the way the lines work upon the paper. I then work over the form with Indigraph full of acrylic ink, and then the rain comes and here I am under an umbrella. This is what I'm prepared to do. It's one of my least favourite things, is an unfinished drawing, especially when you're travelling. It's kind of like unfinished business. It's like not finishing a meal. It's like having to leave a restaurant halfway through. I just can't do that. So if I'm doing a sketch like this and the rain comes, I'm going to do everything I possibly can to get that damn thing finished. But I'm going to speed up. And I think it's that haste which brings the charm to the drawing in the end, that gives it that true sketchiness. I'm still using the A3 paper. I often get asked, why do I always use A3 paper? Well, I don't like sketchbooks, for one thing. I much prefer to have separate sheets so I can choose different colours on different days. I find that sketchbooks are very limiting. There's always that sense of, in advance, what your paper is and what your colour of your paper is. It all feels very controlling, and that's not the way I like to think about doing a sketch like this. At this moment, by the way, it really does bucket down, as English would say. So I kind of retreat for 5 minutes, have a coffee, and then run back out. The rain stops for a few minutes, and we're going to quickly get this drawing done. Just going back to the subject of A3 paper, I do recommend it. If you've never done it, give it a go. I find that A3 is a more relaxing drawing size. The only issue is the inconvenience of carrying it around in your bag. You need a bag that can take that size of paper. for those of you who aren't familiar with A3, it's 12 inches by 16.5 inches, I think. So it's a goodly size. The lovely thing about that size of paper is when you're drawing, you use your arm more than you use your fingers. If you see what I mean, you can actually move your arm to create the line, so it forms a much more relaxing sort of motion. You feel as if you're connected to the drawing, at least I do. Whereas when I'm doing something small, it becomes fiddly and my little fingers are twitching around trying to move a little nib of a pen. It all just feels very precious and very kind of tight, just because the paper isn't allowing me to relax my arms and sort of relax my view of the drawing. So for me, it'll always be A3 or bigger. I mean, I have drawn larger than A3 in the same style. I've kind of drawn A2, twice the size. And if it wasn't for the fact that that just takes an inordinately long amount of time, I'd probably do a lot more of it. It's an instinctive act, but you'll see how this drawing is offset, meaning that the main central view of that doorway is to one side of the paper. It isn't centered in the middle of the page, and that's a very specific act. It creates a sort of drama to the page if everything isn't harmoniously sort of sitting in the middle of the paper. It gives it a bit more sense of leading into it. You feel as if you're approaching it from the side. Now, I am sitting to one side, so it's a natural thing for me to do, but I could have easily positioned this doorway more centrally of the page, and I think it would have been a more boring drawing if I had. So I think it's worth kind of that first 2 seconds when you're thinking about a drawing, it's worth trying to find that little extra element of drama that comes with the position on the page, the first pen you grab, and that sense of how you communicate that view. So here's the final drawing. Thank you to Casa Mateus for the loan of the chair and the table. And perhaps if you see a bottle of Mateus on the shelf, want to grab a bottle and go out and do a sketch. Thank you very much for watching.